morning, world. I am Judy, your web based therapist, making therapy accessible and convenient for our clients in Florida and New York, and of course, sharing information worldwide. Today, I want to talk about 5 tips to help you stop yelling. I posted another video a few weeks back and talking about what happens or reasons that people should stop yelling. And one of the things that I got, one of the feedback that I got was people asking what they can do to help them not yell. So that's why today we're talking about that. But before I get into that, I want to take a couple minutes and say if you are subscribed, thank you so much for being a part of our world. If you are not yet subscribed, please click the subscribe button below and make sure that you're subscribed so that you can be part of our world. And remember to tick the bell so that you're notified of when I post new videos, which I'm doing a little bit more regularly now. And of course, if you'd like to purchase 1 or 3 of my books, there's also a link below that will take you to a website that gives you all your different options for purchasing 1 or 3 of my books. Okay, let's get back to work. 5 tips or 5 things you can do to help you yell less or stop yelling. The ideal situation. First, be aware. Notice when you yell because a lot of times we have patterns. So notice if you notice what's happening, what usually leads to you yelling. If it is something that the children do, if it is something that your spouse does, whatever it is, notice the situations that are causing you to or that are leading to you yelling. What's happening right before you get into that mode of yelling because that will help you better plan out what you need to do. And of course, it takes me to the next one, which is create new communication patterns. Many of us grew up in situations or in homes or in environments where yelling was the communication method. People figured out, people figured that if they could speak louder, if the louder you are, the righter you are, right? But that's not how it works. If that was your communication pattern, if that's how you have been doing it, if that's your method, it's important that you start creating new methods, relearning how to communicate, learning how to use your indoor voice, learning how to get close to people to have a conversation. Those little things make a big difference. But in order to apply them, you first have to start creating new communication patterns. And that will be a little different, especially as you start uh, applying these new communication patterns with your family or with people who are used to you. They may look at it a little funny. They may, and even if you're in a family of yellers and you stop yelling, yes, it may be awkward, it may be weird, but develop new communication patterns, discuss it, plan it out, figure out what you need, how you want communication to happen in your home, in your household, in your family, and develop new communication patterns to allow you to apply that. 3, make a plan. More often than not, yelling follows a specific situation, and yelling happens when we are not sure, or maybe when we're losing, or when we don't know how we should respond or how we should react. But when you have a plan, you already know how you intended to react, how you intended to respond. So because you have a plan, you already know what you're supposed to do. You already know what you wanted to say. You already know what the message is that you wanted to communicate. You already know what the information that you wanted to share was. So now that you have a plan, you're less likely to resort to yelling because hey, you have a plan. You know what you're supposed to do. And your plan should also include what you're going to do if you start noticing that hey, I'm falling into my pattern of yelling. Make a plan to address that. If you start yelling, if you start noticing your voice going up, what will you do? How are you going to do? Do you need to step back and count to 3? Or do you need to count backwards like 3, 2, 1? What will you do to help you get back to a normal, regular, loving husband, wife, person, child, whatever it is, getting back to your normal self so that you stop yelling or so that you don't yell? 4, take time to process before responding. Yelling is a human reaction. Okay, I'll say it's a human reaction that we use when we don't know, when we don't have a more subtle, a quieter, a more thought out response. if I don't have a clear plan, of more thought out response, then yelling works. But if you take the time to process before you start responding, you're more likely to respond with that plan that I spoke about. You're more likely to respond how you want to respond. You're more likely to respond in a way that's not going to cause damage and, you know, have lingering situations after this particular situation is done. So this means that if someone is having a conversation with you and you start to lose it, ask to table the conversation. If oh, a lot of times people have this thing where um a, a lot of I know parents sometimes do it. You walk into the house and things are not the way you wanted it. So you start screaming, you start shouting. Instead of doing that, take a moment to process with what you're walking into. Take a moment to zen out before you go into the house. That way, when you go in, you can, you know, im- apply your plan. You can walk into the house loving parent, loving friend, loving whatever you are, and not the person who starts yelling, "Why am I tripping over shoes?" So make sure you take time to process. If it's a situation you walked into that you weren't expecting, if it is a situation that you were expecting, process it. What do you want out of it? What do you want to communicate? What do you want to get out of it? What do you want to tell these people? What do you want your response to be? And then start speaking. Because if you think before you speak, you're more likely to communicate effectively. Finally, engage others, especially if you yelling or screaming or raising your voice is your method of communication. That's how you've done it, that's how you're used to doing it. It can be difficult to make that change. So engage others. If you truly want to make that change, engage others. This means engaging your family, engaging your children, your spouse, maybe some friends who are close enough that they can share feedback. Engage them. Let them know, hey, this is what I'm working with. This is what I'm working on. And these are the ways that you can help me. For instance, you can have if they notice that you start yelling, there could be cues that they share with you. It could be a code word that you ask them to use when they see you starting to raise your voice. That could be a way that they remind you, hey, bring it back down. Or it could be that your spouse does something to help you calm down, or your child. Well, your child can you can engage children, but sometimes they are a bit. It's tough to find that right balance of how they can help you. But yeah, find a balance of what can be done, or make it a family thing. If we as a family are going to stop yelling, maybe people have, how some families have a swear jar. Maybe you have a yell jar. Maybe you have at the end of the week, we get a family treasure if nobody yells, or if we just decrease our yelling by however much. Make it a project that your family works on as a group, because that way it's not just, hey, mom or dad or whoever is working on this, but we're all working on it and we're all making efforts, and we get to share, hey, these are the ways I'm finding success, and maybe you want to try this, that kind of stuff. So it helps if you engage others. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. One, be aware. Notice the times and the situations that cause you to yell. Two, create new communication patterns. Decide how you want to come off in the world. Create new patterns. That way you have something to use instead of yelling. Three, make a plan. Decide how you're going to respond. Decide how you're going to work. Decide what you're going to do. If you start yelling, make a plan for communication so that you don't have to resort to screaming. Four, take time to process before responding. When you take time to think about things, you're more likely to respond with a well thought out response instead of the usual yelling. And finally, engage others. It's a good way to make the process fun. It's a good way to make sure that you have support, and it's a good way to have people who are able to give you feedback and help you through along the journey. And yeah, as always, if you or someone you know happens to be going through something that's more than you can handle, please remember that there are professionals like myself who are available, able, and willing to help, and are even providing remote services who can assist with whatever you may have going on. So please figure out who those people are in your community so that if you need them, you can reach out and get the help that you need. And that is all we have for today. Good morning, world. Have an awesome day.